Ovo je Jazeera Svijeta, ja sam Azra Hadžić. Evo šta smo izdvojili u emisiji. Prvi put u historiji Izrael regrutira 1000 ultraortodoksnih Jevreja. Mijenja li se narativ vlada u svijetu kada je riječ o Palestini? Izborna je godina u SAD-u, još je evropskih zemalja priznalo Palestinu, a tu je i uloga Haškog suda. Suočene s gubitkom doma, hiljade porodica u Kolumbiji upale i smjestile se na imanje osuđenog trgovca drogom. Prvi put od osnivanja Izrael regrutira 1000 ultraortodoksnih Jevreja. Prošlog mjeseca Vrhovni sud je stavio tačku na njihovo višedecenijsko oslobađanje od obavezne vojne službe na osnovu vjerskih uvjerenja. Na vrhuncu teškog rata teret nejednakosti je veći nego ikad, navodi se u jednoglasnoj presudi suda, koja je naišla na protivljenje. Narednih mjeseci vojska bi trebala izdati još 2000 poziva ultraortodoksnim Jevrejima. Efraim Imbar je predsjednik Jerusalemskog instituta za strategiju i sigurnost i u nastavku govori o ovoj temi.
Well, part of them believes that studying is extremely important, studying holy religious text, and they serve by learning as a shield against aggression and against bad things happening to the people of Israel. This is the rationale, which is an explanation offered to the Israeli population that is totally unacceptable. And although some do accept it because they understand that by force you cannot enlist people. And after the war started in Gaza and Israel has shortages of manpower, this situation has become intolerable for the majority of the Israelis. And even the Supreme Court of Justice ruled that there is no legal ground for the exemptions that were issued so far. Religious leadership is adamant about not joining the military, even for those that do not study the religious text. Because, and they say it openly, they're afraid of the bad influences of serving in the army, on the moral conduct of the ultra-Orthodox. They do not want to serve with women, for example, and they don't want them to be in a fully secular environment, despite the fact that the military is ready to adjust. The military has always tried to be flexible in recruiting different parts of the population in Israel. And the truth is that the most people in the battalion you mentioned are actually not really ultra-Orthodox. They are at the fringes of the Orthodox community and other Orthodox Jews that serve in that battalion. There are attempts in different units to create special companies for ultra-Orthodox. These attempts have only been partly successful, and as everybody knows, most of the Orthodox are not joining the army.
Krajem novembra izraelske snage uhapsile su ga kada je pokušao s porodicom sa sjevera doći do juga pojasa Gaze. Opisuje hapšenje, iskustvo rata i evakuaciju, te koliko je teško ljudima u Gazi koji čak nemaju ni dostojanstvenu smrt. O tome je pisao i u pjesmi, jer poezijom dokumentira palestinsku stvarnost. Za Al Jazeeru Balkans govorio je palestinski pjesnik Mosab Abu Toha.
Unfortunately, death has been our reality since before I was born. I was born in 1992 in a refugee camp. I witnessed the first airstrike in my life when I was nine years old. I got injured in an Israeli airstrike when I was 16 years old. I still have the scars from the shrapnel in my body. I was 16. I lost my house on October 29th last year. I was kidnapped on November 19th. I lost so many friends. So death, and not natural death, but death brought by Israel. This has become our reality, unfortunately, and it seems no one is able to stop Israel from killing us, whether in the West Bank or in the Gaza Strip, whether today or in 1948, before or after. So I was thinking, maybe even if we had to be killed, even if we had to die, at least let it be a decent death. I find myself writing poems after being shattered in my heart when I look at photos and videos, and when I hear stories about people struggling, not struggling because they were expelled from their houses or because they got their houses bombed, but because even in tents, they can't find life. People have to wait for about 5 hours to fill a few liters of water. They run after the food that is dropped from the sky, and some of them get killed. So this shatters my heart, and this shattering of the heart comes to me in the form of a poem. So my heart is shattered into poems, or I am shattered into poems. So the poems that I write are what remains of my heart after watching and after thinking and reflecting on this horrific experience. I had a son who was born in the United States, so he is an American citizen. When the October 7th happened, we were asked to apply for an evacuation list. So we applied for an evacuation list with the American Embassy in Jerusalem. And our names, which is my name, my wife's name, my other 3 children's names appeared on the list to evacuate the Gaza Strip. We were in North Gaza, and we had to cross to South Gaza where the Rafah border crossing is. And that was November 4th. So on November 19th, we decided to go and take that trip from North Gaza to South Gaza. And that's where I was stopped by the Israeli army. They were in the middle of the Salah ad-Din Street, which is one of the 2 roads that connect North and South Gaza. I did not expect to be stopped by the Israeli army. There were hundreds of people walking in that line. So I was called out by an Israeli soldier it was not my name, it was description. He said, the young man with a black backpack and who was carrying a red-haired boy, which was my son, American son. He was 3 years and a half old. So I was surprised because the fact that our names appeared on the list means that we were cleared by Israel, by the Palestinians, and by the Egyptians. So I was surprised to be taken out of the line, to be later stripped naked of my clothes instead of 3 soldiers, before being blindfolded and handcuffed, before being beaten in the face and in my stomach, before being taken to Israel. And I stayed there for about 3.5 days without knowing whether my wife and kids from whom I was separated were still alive or not, whether they made it to a safe place or not. And the conditions were really horrible because there is not enough food. They just give you a crumb of bread, 2 or 3 drops of water. You are not allowed to go to the bathroom except after you are about to pee on yourself. Many kidnapped people died under the Israeli interrogation, or because of the medical conditions they suffered from before they were taken. So the Israeli soldiers did not pay any attention to any people. They did not have any charges against us. They just took us, whether randomly or because they had some intelligence that this person might know something that they wanted to know. And if it wasn't for the great pressure that was put on the Israeli side, I had a few friends. I had so many fans around the world, especially in the United States. For example, the magazines and the journals that I published my work with, the New Yorker, the Nation magazine. I appeared on CNN, so many other places, called out to the Israeli authorities to release me and to just inform them that I'm okay. So after great pressure that was put on them, they said, "We are sorry about the mistake, you are going home." We have been under occupation for 76 years, and no one has been ever serious about offering us a just solution. I mean, the solution that the Palestinians got was a 2-state solution in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, which I think constitute only 20% or maybe less of historic Palestine. So if there should be a solution, an everlasting solution, not an interim solution. It's a solution at all. It should be based on justice for the Palestinian people. They control the borders. I mean, I couldn't leave Gaza until I was 27 years old. And who are you even to put me in a cage? I did not ask you to put me in a cage in order for you to brag about leaving me free to fly inside the cage. This is what they are doing. What I ask people to do is to talk to Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, in the West Bank, in the diaspora, even in 1948. You should talk to them, you should listen to them, you would ask them for what they hope for. You can't consult and ask Israeli historians, oh, what do you think about the Palestinian case? I mean, Palestinians have had great authors, great professors around the world who told the whole world about Palestine and the Palestinian people and their culture, the rich culture before 1948. We had cinemas, we had an airport, by the way, in Qalandia. So Palestine was not a desert as the Zionists wanted us to believe, but it was a paradise for the Palestinian people, and that's why they wanted to take it. They took Palestine on a golden plate.
Govor izraelskog premijera Netanyahua pred američkim kongresom pozdravljen je ovacijama, iako su deseci demokratskih zastupnika bojkotirali obraćanje, a hiljade demonstranata osudili rat koji vodi Izrael. Američka internetska stranica The Hill nedavno je objavila da među demokratama raste ogorčenje zbog izraelskog djelovanja na Bliskom istoku, naročito poslije eskalacije u Jerusalemu i pojasu Gaze. Nakon što je Izrael početkom maja pokrenuo vojnu operaciju u Rafahu, međunarodna osuda je uslijedila gotovo odmah. Iako napadi na Gazu ne jenjavaju, mnogi se pitaju bude li se ipak vlade u svijetu i dopire li do njih ono što demonstranti ponavljaju mjesecima, da se krše prava Palestinaca. Izborna je godina u SAD-u, Biden je povukao kandidaturu, još je evropskih zemalja priznalo Palestinu, a tu je i uloga Haškog suda.
On May 6th, the Israeli government began its military operation in and around the city of Rafah in southern Gaza, and almost immediately it attracted international condemnation, not just from governments, not just from protesters, but also from the world's top legal minds. But why now? Israel's operation to defeat Hamas has been going on for months, and Israel has been committing human rights abuses against the Palestinians for decades. So what's changed? I'm Mariam Namazi, and this is Pinch Point, where politics and geography collide. On May 26th, an Israeli airstrike hit a camp for displaced people in Rafah. At least 45 refugees were killed, mostly women and children.
There is no security in Gaza. There is no security, not for a child, an elderly man, or for a woman.
The humanitarian group MSF, Doctors Without Borders, treated people with shrapnel wounds, fractures, and burns. MSF denounced the attack and pointed out that it had happened after the International Court of Justice had ordered an immediate stop to the military assault on Rafah. The judges cited the catastrophic humanitarian situation in the city and the huge threat posed to the hundreds of thousands of Palestinians who'd sought refuge there. International condemnation of the attack was swift and intense. The French President Emmanuel Macron said he was outraged. German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock and the EU Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell said the ruling by the ICJ judges must be respected. Canada's government used its social media accounts to describe the Israeli attack as horrific.
Palestinian civilians do not have any safe space to go.
Earlier in May, the chief prosecutor at another court, the International Criminal Court in The Hague, announced that he is seeking an arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant for crimes against humanity and war crimes in Gaza. Now governments appear finally to be waking up to what protesters have been saying for months, that Israel's policy of forcing more than 1 million Palestinians into so-called safe zones to clear the way for its tanks to move on Hamas is a catastrophic abuse of human rights. But again, why the outrage now? Well, let's go back to those events at the ICC, because never before, never has the court announced an impending arrest warrant of a head of a democratic state that is an ally of the US. But the administration of President Joe Biden is in a bind. There's an election coming up, and poll after poll suggests Americans disapprove of Israel's actions in Gaza, and those polls were taken before these attacks on Rafah. Israel has always depended on the US for support, politically and militarily. These days, that support looks a lot more conditional. At the same time, Israel's PR machine appears to be losing control of the narrative. The spaces where Israel likes to operate are Tel Aviv and Washington, D.C., but now there's a new player in the mix, The Hague, where the ICJ and the ICC sit. Is Israel now on a collision course with geography, international politics, and the law? To add to all that pressure, at the end of May, 3 European countries, Spain, Norway, and Ireland, announced their formal recognition of Palestine as a state. Spain called it the only route to peace in the Middle East. But here's the bottom line. 145 of the 193 countries in the United Nations now recognize the state of Palestine. That's in spite of the opposition of Israel and its main ally, the United States. Whether Israel's attacks on Gaza can be stopped, whether the civilian deaths will end, will depend in large part on how profound the change in the worldview is, and how much international goodwill towards Israel has been lost. Has the major pinch point of the Middle East finally moved into a political space that the whole world can influence? The Palestinians certainly hope so.
Idemo do Kolumbije, koja ima jednu od najviših stopa zemljišne nejednakosti u svijetu. Manje od 1% populacije posjeduje 60% najboljeg zemljišta u državi, zbog čega su mnogi bez krova nad glavom. U jednom području na sjeveru hiljade porodica odlučile su uzeti stvar u svoje ruke upadom na imanje u vlasništvu osuđenog trgovca drogom. Alessandro Rampietti ima više detalja.
Drvene kolibe prostiru se na 378 hektara ranča Santa Helena. U posljednja 2 mjeseca približno 7000 porodica okupiralo je ovo imanje na periferiji grada Kavkazije. To je trenutno najveća invazija na zemljište u Kolumbiji. Glasnogovornik tih, da ih nazovemo uljeza, kaže da je prvih 200 porodica stiglo krajem marta, nakon što su bili beskućnici ili nisu mogli priuštiti plaćanje rastućih stanarina.
Este sector, el nombre es Nueva Jerusalén. Entonces, como puedes ver, aquí están habitadas todas esas familias vulnerables que no tienen de pronto la oportunidad de un techo.
50-godišnja Nubija Moreno raseljena iz obližnjeg grada u kojem je rudnik zlata, nakon što joj je naoružana grupa ubila sina. Postavila je mali dućan ispred svoje kolibe kako bi spojila kraj s krajem.
No nos alcanza, lo que nos ganamos no nos alcanza para pagar un arriendo. ¿A cómo están los arriendos ahorita? 600, 700 mil pesos, hasta el millón de pesos viene uno a pagar con el arriendo, con servicio y todo. Entonces no le alcanza para uno sostenerse.
Ali ono što je bilo relativno podnošljiva kriza, eksponencijalno je raslo nakon što je predsjednik Gustavo Petro obećao kupiti zemlju za takozvane uljeze ili osvajače zemlje. Još hiljade porodica okupirale su ostatak posjeda.
Alcalde, usted aquí como primera autoridad le solicito háblese con los señores dueños de tierras, haciendas, latifundistas.
Ali nije bilo tako lako.
This property was owned by a convicted drug trafficker extradited to the United States, and it has been at the center of a legal battle for over a decade. People here tell you that the invasion is a reaction to too many years of broken promises on the redistribution of land.
Kolumbija ima jednu od najviših stopa zemljišne nejednakosti na svijetu. Manje od 1% populacije posjeduje 60% najboljeg zemljišta u državi. Otkad je preuzeo dužnost, predsjednik Petro obećao je kupiti više od 3 miliona hektara zemljišta za redistribuciju siromašnima.
Con la llegada del presidente Petro, pues lo primero es que ha habido una voluntad de él. Nunca antes se había puesto tanto recurso del presupuesto nacional para adelantar la reforma agraria. Desafortunadamente, las normas que han estado vigentes y los procedimientos y los protocolos.
Lokalne vlasti su 2 puta pokušale iseliti takozvane osvajače, ali su to blokirali vlada ili sud, ostavljajući ih u neizvjesnom prostoru između nade za osiguranje pristojnog doma i bijede u kojoj se nalaze.
Pakistan je nedavno postigao sporazum s MMF-om o kreditu vrijednom 7 milijardi dolara. To vladi pruža predah dok nastoji izvući zemlju pogođenu krizom iz rastućeg javnog duga i slabog ekonomskog rasta. Ali, kako izvještava Kamal Hajder iz Islamabada, brojni građani se brinu da će ih to dodatno opteretiti, uzimajući u obzir uvjete koje postavlja MMF.
Ovo je manje imućna četvrt pakistanskog glavnog grada Islamabada i dom muslimanskih kršćanske zajednice. Vrućijeg ljetnog dana Šagufta prodaje ledene bombone. Kaže da zarađuje jedva 300 rupija dnevno, što je tek nešto više od $1. Za nju je to jedini način da pomogne suprugu i 5 djece da dopune porodični prihod.
मुश्किल ये है लेकिन गुजारा करना पैंदा फिर भाई हर चीज़ ते महंगी उसे देख सकते हो सारे हालात किस तरह ने थे ना बिजली ना पानी गैस.
Brine da će povišenje cijena komunalnih usluga samo dodatno pogoršati njihovu patnju i kaže da, iako mogu bez plina, ne mogu bez struje i vode. Dodatni porezi na poljoprivredu, zajedno s povišenjem cijena komunalnih usluga i osnovnih roba, dio su vladinog plana da se pridržava MMF-ovih zahtjeva. Pakistanska ekonomija godinama se bori. Viši ekonomist s kojim smo razgovarali tvrdi da je godišnji budžet izvor svih ekonomskih problema.
The excess demand created by the budget, excessive spending, is what leads to inflation that is crippling the people, the poor especially, and this is historic high in the inflation.
Kaže da se javna potrošnja eksponencijalno povećala, što nije dobro za ekonomiju. Međutim, ministar financija poručuje da svi moraju doprinijeti ekonomiji države. Kako kaže, filantropija i dobrotvorni rad mogu voditi škole, univerzitete i bolnice, ali ne i državu. Država može opstati samo na porezima.
There is no plan B, but to go back to the IMF for another loan would require more taxes in the new budget, and that's bound to cause more resentment and a wider public outrage. Kamal Haider, Al Jazeera, Islamabad.
Ekonomska situacija Šri Lanke počela se popravljati, sudeći prema riječima predsjednika. Država se oporavlja od velikih financijskih izazova koji su doveli do masovnih protesta i političke krize prije 2 godine. Šri Lanka tada nije mogla otplatiti inozemni dug, pa je prvi put u historiji bankrotirala. Sada, pomoću kredita MMF-a, pravi preokret, ali građani su i dalje skeptični.
Mnogo se toga promijenilo na Šri Lanki od ekonomske krize koja je zemlju dovela do zastoja 2022. Nastavljaju se zaustavljeni projekti, poput dijela ovog autoputa koji košta $360 miliona. Čini se da su redovi za gorivo i hranu stvar prošlosti. Preokret je počeo paketom pomoći od $2,9 milijardi Međunarodnog monetarnog fonda, ali to je došlo uz stroge uvjete da Šri Lanka restrukturira svoj dug.
අප දේශීය ණය ප්‍රතිවගත කරන කටයුතු අවසන් කළා. දැන් විදේශීය රටවල දෙපාර්ශ්වික ණය ප්‍රතිවගත කරන කටයුතු සාර්ථකව අවසන් කර ගැනීමට අපට හැකි වී තියෙනවා. ඊළඟට අපට තියෙන්නේ
Bilateralni vjerovnici dogovorili su nove uvjete za koje predsjednik kaže da će vladi uštedjeti više od $5 milijardi. Opozicijski parlamentarac Eran Vikramaratne, profesionalni bankar koji je bio na čelu Nacionalne razvojne banke, rekao je da se mora učiniti mnogo toga kako bi se reforma uravnotežila s dobrobitima za sve.
The tension on the streets, because people have really been hit, are great. And that is really one big cause for concern. I've told the IMF this myself, that you can tick all the boxes, but if it creates social unrest, don't think your program has succeeded, your program has failed.
Analitičari kažu da je rast ključan za oporavak, ističući da su se neki sektori koji su se smanjili do 70% oporavili, ali nisu ni blizu ranije proizvodnje.
The number of people who are in poverty is estimated to between 25 to 30% of the population. So, although there is a sense of calm, the quality of life of almost 50% of our population, if not even more, has gone down.
Enoka Dilrukši se slaže. Al Jazeera ju je srela kako kupuje povrće na povratku kući s posla računovođe u gradu.
Cost of living නම් is ගොඩක් වැඩි. මට මං ගත්තොත් මට දරුවෝ 4 දෙනෙක් ඉන්නවා. එතකොට ඒන් දෙන්නෙක් ඉගෙන ගන්නවා තාම.
Many Sri Lankans agree that the country now is in a better place than it was 2 years ago. Development projects are back on track and inflation is under control. But they're divided about the government's handling of the economic recovery, including stringent reforms it implemented to secure a bailout from the International Monetary Fund. Minel Fernandez, Al Jazeera, Colombo.
Ovom pričom završavamo emisiju. Pratite nas i na portalu balkans.aljazeera.net. Doviđenja.